fulfilling the vision of the board was created. Foster excellence for every student in the areas of academic skills, knowledge, citizenship, and personal development.
Thank you, thank you. Now the 162 board is now fully constituted, and we proceed to the election of officers. Is there a nomination for the position of board president?
Madam Superintendent.
Yes, sir.
I nominate Kevin Murphy as president of School Board 162.
There's a nomination for Kevin Murphy. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there another nomination for the position of president? Is there another nomination for position of president? Congratulations, Mr. Murphy, and welcome back.
Thank you.
Is there a nomination for the position of vice president?
Yes, Dr. Davis, I nominate Mr. Ron Bean for vice president.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy.
You're
Is there a
welcome.
second?
Second.
Madam Superintendent, you need to call a roll call vote for the position of president.
Oh,
I never ever dispute the person that I know knows more than anyone else. However, that's only necessary because if we had other people running, and so therefore I'll call a vote for everyone. But I will go back and do that, sir. Okay. We have Ron Beam. Did I hear a second? I'm sorry. Karen McCray. Is there another nomination for the position of vice president? Thank you. Is there a nomination for the position of board secretary?
yes. I nominate our dear Sandy as secretary of the board.
There's a nomination for Sandy Gordon. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ron Bean. Is there another nomination for the position of secretary? Mrs. Foster, in light of the fact that we have only one nomination for each of the positions, would you please call the roll? And the motion would be that we're nominating Mr. Kevin Murphy as president, Ron Bean as vice president, and Sandy Gordon as secretary. Would you call the roll? Thank you.
Mr. Bean,
Aye.
Mrs. Gordon.
Aye.
Mrs. McCray.
Aye.
Dr. Leatherwood,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Mrs. Hutchinson. Aye. Mr. Murphy.
Aye.
Thank you very much. And now I defer to the president of the board and congratulate everyone. Thank you, Mr. Kevin Murphy, president of the Madison 162 board.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. And now for our regularly scheduled Elementary School District Board 162 meeting. So to begin the meeting, I'd simply like to congratulate my board colleagues on successful elections and simply getting that confirmation from the community that you are doing what we need you to do here in these seats. I, of course, believe that, but it's always good to get it from the community. So again, congratulations. So to convene this regular meeting, Secretary, please call the roll.
Mr. Murphy,
Present.
Mrs. Hutchinson,
Present.
Mr. Johnson,
Present.
Dr. Leatherwood,
Here.
Mrs. McCray, Mrs. Gordon,
Here.
Mr. Bean.
President.
We'll now move along with communications, announcements, and schedules. Dr. Davis.
Thank you, Mr. President. We're entering that May-June phase, and actually, we have activities almost every night. And so that's a wonderful thing. We're now back to actually having in-person honor society inductions. And so I hope that I will see most of the board members. We will be at the Huth for the Illinois and Huth National Junior Honor Society ceremony at Huth. Mrs. Calvin, I've heard I've seen several times. Is the 7 o'clock correct? Okay, 6 p.m. So with the secretary, please make that change, 6 p.m. And since this is Illinois Youth, I did want to say to the board, we do anticipate that Dr. Mays will be there. She is having another challenge, and I believe now she's at Christ Hospital with her husband, but we do anticipate that she will be participating Thursday evening. May 16th is the Southland Spring Concert at Governor State. May 24th, 400 of our budding band students from all of our schools, starting with the baby bands. And I see Dr. Cougar, he hates for me to say baby bands, but starting with the baby bands, we haven't done this since 2019, but we're back together with our children on the 24th at Governor State. May 27th is the Southland graduation at the Harris Theater. May 29th, Memorial Day, but we will be marching in the Memorial Day Parade. Both of our bands, Dr. Cougar, the Huth will lead us off, the Southland Band, and I'm sure we'll be joined by 227 also for the celebration of Memorial Day. June 1st, the family comes back together. As you know, we did an odyssey. We actually graduated all of 162, one child at a time. It took us 12 days, but we did that in the midst of COVID so that every parent could see their child get their diploma. And then the next year, we were able to do 32 graduations with 8 parents at a time, trying to do it safely in our field house. Last year, we had 2 graduations. This year, the family comes back together. So, but I do have some other information to give you that the family comes back together, but we are having a tiny problem. But we do anticipate June 1st that all of our students will be graduating at the Tinley Park Convention Center. And of course, you'll receive detailed information about that. June 2nd is our last day of school. It's unbelievable to me that we're just 3 weeks out. However, there's always summer school, and that's a wonderful thing. So June 12th is the first day of summer school. And I do have, well, June 20th, we're listing as a board meeting, but when we get to the consent agenda, Mr. President, we're going to ask for an additional meeting in May because we do have some things that we want to bring to the attention of the board. But that concludes the announcements.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. At this time, we will have the audience to visitors pertaining to agenda items only. If there's a member of the audience present who wishes to address a matter that is on tonight's agenda, please come forward. State your name, your address, and your concern. There being none, we will move along then to a motion regarding the consent agenda.
Mr. President,
Yes, Mr. Vice President.
I move to approve the consent agenda dated May 9, 2023, and every item contained therein.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion, Dr. Davis?
Yes, Mr. President. Under annual business, we're asking that we resume the practice of having a second meeting in May. Prior to COVID, that was something that we did on a yearly basis. We're asking for permission to have a special meeting on May 23rd at the same time, and of course, in our district office.
Thank you for highlighting that. Secretary, please call the roll.
Mr. Bean,
Aye.
Mrs. Gordon,
Aye.
Mrs. Gray, Dr. Leatherwood,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Mrs. Hutchinson,
Aye.
Mr. Murphy.
Aye. And now for the wonderful time for which we have been waiting, the superintendent's report. Dr. Davis.
Well, I only have one negative piece of news, so I'm going to give that first, and then I'll go on to the rest of the news. I don't know why, but we're having clusters of COVID that are popping up in the district. The first school to experience this was the Indiana, and I did put out a message. Ms. Hatsana, are you still at 7?
Yes.
Okay, 7 cases, and over 5 we consider to be a cluster. So we are remasking at the Indiana. The parents received that notification that we would be masking for 5 days. The one of the issues, remember the resolution at the national and state level have now been eliminated. And so we look at this and analyze it alone, but we have not seen 7 cases in any one place since October of 2022. That's the last time we had 7. So the Indiana parents, as well as all of the parents, are aware. The reason that I notified everyone, we are grade level centers for the most part. And so therefore it's very possible for you to have a child at another school. So we wanted to make sure that they were aware. But as we reopened from the weekend, we now have 10 students at the Illinois who are positive and 5 adults. And that's a sizable cluster. Before the meeting started, we did send a message out to the parents that we will remask at the Illinois for 5 days also. I can't tell you what this means in terms of exposure. Schools are totally separate from each other. They're located in the same suburb, but that's huge at the Illinois, 15 cases. And 5 of them are adults. So we'll continue to monitor this. It could be, and I'm hoping that it will not spread. We've had an occasional case since we went mask optional, but it's necessary that we remask. What we did this past weekend when we only had the Indiana, and now we will do that with the Illinois. We misted all of the classrooms. We sanitized. We brought in our janitors on overtime, and this is what they did for the reopening of the Indiana. We'll do the same thing with the Illinois, but and we've done the sanitizing, but with the misting, we have to close up the building for 24 hours so that this just sits on surfaces, and that's the process. So it's disturbing, and you heard me say the family comes back together. It could be, I'm not saying that it is, but it could be that we come back to graduation mask if we see this, that there's a problem, because we have a couple of weeks and we're looking at this. But 7 cases at the Indiana and 15 at the Illinois. And because we're not testing as we were on every 3-week basis, there could be other cases that people think are a cold or the flu or something of that sort. We'll make a decision as to whether we want to go back in that direction also. It's a matter of concerns, but I wanted to share that with the board. But moving on, I talked about the Honor Society induction, and we're very excited about that. We want you to come, so we're not going to share details, but the 2 principals, Mrs. Calvin and Dr. Mays, have been collaborating, and we look forward to the induction in person. The honor societies have continued to be in existence, but certainly not performing all of the duties that they have been. So I'm looking forward to this on Thursday evening, and the location is the Huth. And let me say this about the Huth. You need to come now, because remember, on the last day of school, we'll be closing the Huth down. The Huth is our construction site for this summer, and so there will be no activities at the Huth. It's actually going to be a construction site for 2 consecutive summers, because it's going to take us, the Huth is our largest building. It's going to take us that much time to do washrooms, to do ceilings, all the things that we need to do at the Huth. So you're looking at a picture of the Huth now. probably some drone technology, but it'll be even better when we finish at the end of the 2-year process. But we still will be there on the 11th, and that's a good thing. Parent University, I didn't know what would happen, but my conclusion from Parent University, we've had 2 so far. Thursday, March 3rd, and Mr. Evans presented cyber safety, the parent role, and Mr. Bryson, and I'm hopeful that he was so incredibly powerful that I hope that he's going to come and join us to bring some messages to our students when we reopen. And so we have been talking to him, but he talked about positive parent-teacher partnerships. Parents simply stayed and listened to him even after the time was over. So very, very positive. And I don't know if this is possible because I know I don't have a balance, but balancing work and family and all the other things that, but that's fine. If we don't have a balance, I think that you'll be, but Laura Fisher did an excellent job there. We had 46 participants on March 30th. And then April 20th, social, emotional, and behavioral supports. Mrs. Houston, she was so dynamic. She presented to the retreat staff, the administrators, this past summer. And there were 57 participants. And basically, she was giving strategies about, we know we should exercise, we know we should eat well, but all kinds of other things that we can do. I like the activity where we were supposed to put all of our problems on a paper plate, crumble up the paper plate, show it away, and then your problems are gone, you're going to something else. I'm not sure, I have to think about that, whether it works, but all right, that was part of the participation. But my conclusion with this is everyone is anxious to learn. And so we're going to continue to have our parents to come in and to learn together. So, but this time, the special education team did something different. We had a children's room because parents have children, which is why they're here. And they had movies and I'm not sure we had healthy snacks, but snacks. And so that went very well also because it's a little difficult for them to just sit and watch a presentation. So Parent University is up and well, and perhaps we needed this after COVID. Maybe we need to come together to learn and to share ideas, but that was my conclusion at the end of Parent University. And something new, and I'm not sure that we can play a little bit of this, Mr. Lights, we can't, okay, all right. What we're doing is, number one, we're introducing our staff to the community, but registration is very, very significant. So what we decided to do was to make a video and to show parents exactly how you can register online. And if all else fails, you can still come in and do this in person. But Mr. Talley was kind enough. I didn't know we had that many steps in registration, but I think we had 100 that registered right away. And we're now starting a competition between the schools that can get the most parents registered by what date? May 25th. We'll get a pizza party. So maybe that's our children can encourage their parents to go online and to register them. Now, we're really just talking about the returning parents because it's a whole different process. We need you to have documentation and come in for registration. But I don't know if it was exciting, but it was certainly well done. But now Dr. Cougar talking about STREAM was exciting. Dr. Cougar, can you come up, please? Now he's masked because he spent the day at Illinois. All right, what is STREAM all about?
STREAM is about having fun through academic progress. STREAM is science, technology, reading, arithmetic, arts, mathematics, engineering. STEM is aeronautics science, space engineering. You name it, we're trying to do it. Future and farming. Kids love to play in the dirt, so let's learn how to build a farm. How about some CSI? Do some crime scene investigation. Who stole the cookie from the cookie jar? Let's figure this out. Those are the type of activities that we're going to present to our kids this summer. We're gonna have fun, a whole lot of fun. And in the meantime, they won't even know it. They'll be learning the next gen science standards.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, all right. So there are two areas in which we're having summer school. Obviously, we have our mandatory summer school, but we already see registrations coming in for STREAM and robotics, drones, and 3D printers, and all of that is a part of our investment in summer programs. So I think I'll let you know the numbers from before we open summer school, but very, very exciting. Dr. Cougar brought a group of very, very creative teachers together and their ideas. I don't know about who stole the cookie from the cookie jar, but okay. CSI, but I admire the creativity of our teachers, and I think it's going to be a wonderful summer. But what Mr. Lights has been doing, and you probably have seen them, is putting out videos, and there's chapters, so you don't have to watch everything. Maybe you want to just know about how you register. All right, then you can click on that. And all of these various videos will be also, there will be a link on our website. So if someone wants to know about a particular thing, but all of these videos also are saved on YouTube. So I guess it's the wave of the future. Well, it is the wave of the future. So that's a good thing. Now, I am really excited about Roosevelt University. But before we talk about Roosevelt, we have actually two boards. And on the other board sit three deans from colleges. Dr. Vinnie Hall is professor at Roosevelt University. She's aware that 162, as well as all the other districts, have been struggling to fill our classrooms. And so because we have students that are coming out of college, have graduated, and we created cadre sub-positions. We also have learning loss teachers, and we have parapros that also have college degrees. She wrote a grant proposal for Roosevelt. They adopted her idea, and they have accepted 10 of our young people into the Roosevelt program. Where will the Roosevelt program be located? You're sitting in it. So they'll be upstairs in 317. First of all, one of my concerns has always been, we're top heavy with women, that in education. And one of the reasons that women do not go back to school are the responsibilities to their own children, because that's an issue, but the traveling time. And so we've been working over time. Loyola University was willing to partner with the high school, not in having a on-site program, but to give dual credit. So we thank them also, and they're looking to expand the dual credit program. But we wanted teachers to be able to earn a master's here and to do it with the most efficient use of time. What we didn't know when Roosevelt approached us is that they'd also written another grant, which is called Grow Your Own. And so Roosevelt is picking up 40% of the tuition. And so, all right.
Outstanding.
But then Dr. Vinnie Hall wrote a second grant to a program called Black Educators United. And 5 of our teachers are going to receive free tuition. So 10 of them, and they don't have to necessarily have graduated from any of our schools, but they're here with us now. They will have their own classroom, but this program begins now in June. In June, and this is a day from 9 o'clock to 5 o'clock, 5 days a week is the first semester. But then when school opens, they go on Zoom, but then they come back the next year. So really in a little over 18 months, you can get your teacher certification because you must pass the state exam. And you can get your master's degree in elementary ed. So Grow Your Own, Roosevelt University, we're thankful for them. They were out the other day. The coordinator of this program is Yvonne Williams. And it's just extremely exciting. So I introduced this to you at the last board meeting. I did not know what kind of response we were having. But the other thing that we're going to do, you know, that we do reimburse part of the tuition for our teachers. That's a part of our union contract. But we're going to front load this. The district is going to invest in because these are new teachers. So we know that they probably don't have checks for thousands of dollars to pay their share. But we can then subtract the money from their paychecks so that they can just continue on. So between Roosevelt, between Black Teachers United and 162, it's a very, very positive thing. And so I invite you to come and visit, but this will be a busy building. We're also bringing the 7th and 8th grade from Huth over. They will be on the 3rd floor. There'll be credit recovery, the STREAM program with Dr. Cougar. It's going to be a busy summer, but a fruitful summer. So are there questions about Roosevelt? I'm just extremely grateful that they have, in a sense, adopted us.
My question is this the only program of its kind in the region?
It's the only program of its kind in the region, but up north of Chicago, there are 2 programs. And then this is the only program that's south of Chicago, yes.
Yes, thank you.
I have a question. Is there a commitment then from the students when they graduate that they're with us for so many years before moving on?
Correct. Make 3 years, 2 years. They must stay with us after they graduate, yes.
Thank you.
So I'm excited about them.
Oh, yes.
And finally, Dr. Cougar, I have to ask you again, but tell me what we're going to do on the 24th, the band program. I promise not to say baby bands and that kind of thing. Are we, what is it, hot cross buns? Are we still doing that?
Yeah, we're gonna have the baby band come. We gotta have the baby band.
Okay, all right, I'm at,
Gotta have those 4th graders. Ooh, we gotta have those 4th graders play. It's a beautiful sound that they create, don't it?
that's true.
Brother Johnson knows. Oh God, it's wonderful. Yeah, so on the 24th, we will have our district band instrumental music concert, which will include beginning band, baby band, intermediate band, the string ensemble, the Huth jazz band, Salk jazz band will perform a number. Indiana Jazz Band may perform a number, as well as the Huth Symphonic Band. Now, I didn't get a chance. I don't think I told you, Doc. The last competition, Illinois Elementary School Association's band competition, was about 2 weeks ago. Your Huth band was listed as the best band of the day at the Manteno site. Very good.
Okay, but is it hot cross buns? Is that what we're doing? The big, okay, it wouldn't be perfect without hot cross buns. So we're anxious to hear about that. So that concludes my report. You know that we've concluded our testing for the year that we have from the state. We will not receive these results until the fall, and certainly we will share them with you. But we're very much looking forward to the celebrations that we have throughout the district, and every school has an activity. We're also back to field trips, and we have ancillary emergency buses, the buses that are out there. If we have problems, then these are Safeway buses. This is our new company, and they were kind enough to invest in us on the front end so that we don't continually have this problem. But we're really looking forward to a seamless summer school. I think it's going to be exciting for the students because sometimes they need to learn in their own way. And I don't know that much about farming and digging in the dirt. I don't know how much we will do of that, but I just think it's good for us to learn and to be able to smile and have joy at the same time. So I think that's what summer school is all about. So that concludes my report, but I'm prepared to answer any questions that you might have about anything.
I have one question.
Yes.
The buses outside, they're there because we wanted to see that they're there, or they're
Nope.
there if we need something, they'll send a driver over, and what is going on with the buses again?
Safeway, as you know, is, well, first of all, they're our new company. You approved that, I think at the last board meeting.
Yeah.
However, we started to have, we don't want to be critical of our current bus company, but we started to have more and more problems. And so both companies met. The agreement was that Safeway would immediately take one of our schools. They took the Illinois. Those are the buses, but their bus drivers, you know, they're opening up a center out here in Frankfurt. But their bus drivers live up north because they're hiring bus drivers. So there's a van out there that picks them up in the morning, brings them out here. We haven't had any problems at the Illinois, but that relieved the stress on Kickard. And so we have fewer buses that are running late. But if we get, we've now resumed field trips, and fewer buses are running late because Safeway is taking the pressure off. They can turn the whole parking lot into a bus barn, as far as I'm concerned. Get the children to school on time, take the pressure off of the parents who have to get to work. And so they're there, they bring them back, but they also do field trips for us. And so I think it's just a wonderful, at this point, synergistic relationship. What we have to look at, however, is when 162, which is the largest busing district, not only in the south suburbs, but I'm hearing that there's not, outside of Chicago, of course, there's not a larger busing entity even up north. I want 56 buses on the street every day. I want them on time. We want to get the children home on time, and we want to be back to having field trips. So we're appreciative of them doing this because they've lessened the pressure on our existing bus company. But that's what they're doing, is bringing people in. We keep the buses, and they run the routes with the teachers. Next year, also, as I shared with you, we're looking forward to opening with our teachers, but we want to segue so that the teachers don't have to ride the buses in the morning and the afternoon. And so that would be our goal. But you're looking at the Illinois buses that are parked out there. And if you happen to be here at 6 o'clock in the morning, a van will pull up, bus drivers will get out, and the day will begin.
Fantastic.
Wonderful. Great. Are there other questions for the superintendent? Thank you, Dr. Davis. So now moving on to legislation. Are you privy to any information on that?
Well, actually, yes, sir. A very complicated law passed in the fall, but now it affects us July 1st. And that is anyone that we hire that's coming in, they must fill out a form that indicates all positions that they've had where they were in contact with children. And then we must go back and get a reference to make sure that there was no improper behavior in terms of their relationships with the children. And we must do this for each new person that we hire. But on the other hand, that means that we must respond to requests. And I think this is going to be huge coming from other districts. We have 20 days to do this. We're going to see what kind of a burden this puts on us. Obviously, we've always checked references, but we've never had a form or anything of that sort that went to every employer that someone had that brought you in contact with children. This is a response to the fact that mistreatment of children and sexual allegations are up. And how do you get to the bottom of this? Then you have to have those entities that house children respond. And obviously, you're talking about the school districts. In our state, you're talking about over 800 school districts that have to respond. But this applies to daycare centers. It could apply to anything. Now, it's not driving a bus. That's not what we're talking about. But this will be a huge implementation effort, but it begins on July 1st. And that's the major legislation that affects us that now goes in process. So our CFO Mr. Englert and our attorney for the board, Robert Hall, have been studying this. They participated in webinars, et cetera. Now we've developed the forms, we go into the training process, and we see what this is going to mean. Because remember, 162 has been in existence for a long time. We don't know who left us 20 years ago or 25 years ago that might put us down as a place where they have contacted children that we have to respond to. So we'll see what this is. I'm hoping that this is not going to mean a position. We don't know this yet.
Thank you. Just a couple of questions.
Question.
Yes, Board Member McCray. Why don't you go first? Our question might be the same thing. Go ahead.
Oh, all righty. Just curious, is there a area or concern for psychological testing, or have they had previous mental episodes?
No. Craig, do you want to respond to that? But no.
That's not a specific question on the form. So the legislation required that the Illinois State Board of Education develop forms that all school districts and daycares and other agencies are utilizing. And that mental health is not specifically on there. It asks about inappropriate conduct with children or even allegations of inappropriate conduct with children specifically.
Yes. My question is whether or not there is a reporting protocol for the applicant as well as the district back to the state of Illinois.
I guess I need more information. We've always had to, first of all, let's say that we had an employee that we had disciplined in terms of misconduct with a child. We would have already reported that to the state. Because that's just, and to DCFS, et cetera. So, but based on what we find, it could mean, first of all, you can't hire the person. So you're, in a sense, waiting on, you don't know how many entities to respond. So that in itself, we'll see what that means. But any allegation of an impropriety with a child is reported usually to the police, but to DCFS. And so there is no information that is not known to the state board, but we're not reporting to the state board specifically. The reporting is really to DCFS and to the police.
Yes, thank you. Is there any other legislation that
Not at this
impacts us?
time, no, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. Now moving on to new business. I believe there is an item on the agenda regarding Safeway.
Mr. President,
Yes, Madam Secretary.
move to approve the contract with Safeway Incorporated to provide transportation at Illinois School for the remainder of the 2022-2023 school year.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
No, sir. The buses are here. It's working perfectly.
Thank you. Secretary, please call the roll.
Mr. Bean,
Aye.
Mrs. Gordon,
Aye.
Mrs. McCray, Dr. Leatherwood,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Mrs. Hutchinson,
Aye.
Mr. Murphy.
Aye. Moving right along, there is an item regarding Waste Management Incorporation. So is there a motion?
Yes, please. Move toward the one-year contract for waste disposal services to Waste Management Incorporated.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Mr. English.
In your packet is a brief memo from me with regard to the waste disposal contract. This is something we did go out to bid for about 2 months ago. We weren't happy with the response we received, and we also had some questions with regard to how these companies were going to handle overages, which is something that's very common. And so we did tweak the bids a little bit, reach out to some more. We did receive 3 bids back. Once again, actually Waste Management, who is the current contractor for District 162, was the lowest bidder. And so we are recommending awarding the contract to Waste Management. Yes. McCray.
What does overages mean?
So when so we have dumpsters at each of the buildings, most buildings have 2. When the truck pulls up to get the dumpster, if the lid is raised because there's more garbage in there than allowed the lid to be closed to a certain degree, the waste disposal company can charge the district for an overage fee depending on the amount of yards or depending on how much that's raised up. So it's really something that we work, and when I say we, really Mr. Walzak works with the custodians on almost daily in trying to make sure we distribute the garbage between the various dumpsters that are there so that we don't get charged those additional fees. But they can add up depending on how each company structures their overage fees. That's why we wanted to make sure we had a real good understanding of that.
Or okay.
But Mr. President, if I could comment, during COVID, we were not recycling. And also, for the most part, we continue to use bottled water. Because we're not recycling, which and we have to decide when we go back to that because someone has to handle that. And so we had overages during COVID simply because there were more things were thrown out
Yes.
than we would normally do. Even in terms of cans of pop, we, would not a lot of money, but you would get a certain amount of money for the cans. We stopped doing that with COVID. No one was having, we just threw all of that away. And so that was a big part of the overage.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Davis. I'm curious, Mr. Englert, as to whether or not there's anything in the contract specifically limiting the number of dumpsters. For example, to prevent overages, just simply get more dumpsters. Is that permissible?
Yes, so what we did is we specified, and again, when I say we, really Mr. Walzak went through building by building to look at usage and specify which size dumpsters we need at each location to try to minimize that. In addition, the district does have a 30-yard roll-off dumpster for large projects and things like that if we have anything going on in a specific building. So that was also incorporated into the bid. So, and there's also an additional price in there if we request an additional dumpster be dropped off for, some sort of again, for a significant amount of garbage based on some kind of project or whatever. So, yeah, Mr. Walzak spent a lot of time just going through building by building and really assessing what are the sizes that we need for each building to be effective.
Okay, thank you. And then my next question is, since he's done the assessment, if we find at some time in the future that a dumpster size is insufficient, can we exchange that for a larger dumpster without incurring additional expense?
It would be an additional expense, but yes, we can exchange that out.
Okay, but it would be a one-time expense or an ongoing expense?
It would, so if we went from, say, a 4-yard dumpster to a 6-yard dumpster, it would be an ongoing additional expense for that specific dumpster because it's a larger dumpster that they would be emptying each time.
Okay, thank you. It's a good thing Mr. Walzak has worked in the area for decades,
Yes.
and he is aware of the needs of the district. So thank you very much for answering my questions. Okay, at this point, I ask that the secretary please call the roll. We've had a motion, a second, and discussion.
Mr. Murphy,
Aye.
Mrs. Hutchinson,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Dr. Leatherwood,
Aye.
Mrs. McCray,
Hi.
Mrs. Gordon,
Aye.
Mr. Bean.
Thank you. Next, there's an item regarding general obligation school bonds. Yes, Mr. Vice President.
Move approval of a resolution providing for the issuance of not to exceed $5,300,000 general obligation school bonds or alternate revenue source, series 2023 of School District 162, Cook County, Illinois, for the purpose of renovating, repairing, or equipping district facilities, providing for the levy of a direct annual tax sufficient to pay for the principal and interest on said bonds, and authorizing the sale of said bonds to the purchaser thereof.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there discussion?
This is just the final resolution that the board needs to pass to allow the district to issue the debt related to the kitchen project. So the board 2 months ago did approve the resolution of notice of intent. A public hearing was held last month. And then, of course, this is the final resolution to provide the parameters for the bond sale itself. We did get our Moody's rating back today. Every time the district does a bond issuance, the rating agencies go through, and in our case, Moody's does issue a rating. So they maintain the same rating the district has had for quite some time, which is AA3, which is good. So we were very pleased with that. So once the board approves this resolution tonight, we will work with our financial advisors at PMA to go ahead and complete the bond sale.
Thank you, Mr. Englert. We've had a motion, a second, and discussion. Are there questions from the board?
Has there been any discussion in terms of projected interest rate vis-a-vis the issue that is pending on a national level about debt cap?
Yeah, it's hard to say right now what that's going to be. The parameters resolution allows the district to wait until it's an advantageous time to actually issue that debt. So our financial advisors will be watching that to see, when is the best time to go out and actually complete the sale itself to try to mitigate any kind of issues with, interest rates, as you said. So we don't have a hard projection right now. This is a competitive sale, meaning that it's rather than negotiating with one underwriter, it goes out as a bid essentially, where many underwriters come and bid on a rate. So the district will get the lowest rate available. I can't tell you as I stand here right now what exactly that rate will be until those bids come in.
Thank you. Secretary, please call the roll.
Mr. Bean,
Aye.
Mrs. Gordon,
Aye.
Mrs. McCray, Dr. Leatherwood,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Mrs. Hutchinson,
Aye.
Mr. Murphy.
Aye. At this point, there is an item simply titled Board Member Issues or Reports. Are there any issues that the board members would like to talk about, discuss, and or are there any reports of which the community should be made aware? There being none, we now move to the second and final audience to visitors on the agenda. This audience to visitors is for anything pertaining to the school district, but maybe not necessarily on the agenda. So at this time, if you would like for the board to be an audience for your concern, we ask that you step to the podium, state your name, your address, and your concern.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Rafia, R-A-F-I-A-H, Maxie, M-E-X-I-E, Cole. I recently got married, C-O-L-E. I am a resident of, you wanted address, is that correct?
Please, for the record.
759, 759 Byron Court, Olympia Fields, Illinois.
Thank you. And now your concern, please.
Yes, sir. Thank you, board, for allowing me to speak today. Several months ago, I came and I addressed the board in regards to my concerns and wanting to know a little bit more about what are we doing regarding mental health awareness and suicide prevention. As you may know, I lost my son, Jamal Clay, by way of suicide, May 27, 2020. He was a proud, and we have always been a proud member of this district since 1988. My concern today and my talk is about getting more information about House Bill 0577, known as the Anne Marie Law. As you may know, May is Mental Health Awareness Month. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. But what has happened to my son and what is going on in our community in regards to mental health awareness and suicide prevention needs to be addressed. This House bill was elected by Representative Lindsay Laporte, and I have copies of it if you're interested in reviewing it. It was enacted July 1st, 2022, and it has some recommendations for the State Board of Education to go about as it relates to suicide prevention and awareness. One of the things that I found in this bill was that there was a request for many students to have the suicide prevention awareness hotline on their IDs. A few months ago, I was attending a invited conference and speaker invite at the Rich Central and Rich South High Schools. And I asked the students about this. Many of them, for the first time, turned their IDs over and actually read the number as if it was something they never seen before. Therefore, I'm interested in knowing what are we doing about the education and awareness as it relates to what the state board has been put in place to do with House Bill 0577. As a founder of Soul Survivors, spelled SOUL, Survivors of Chicago, I have a nonprofit that I founded after the loss of my son to provide mental health awareness, suicide prevention, and supports for those impacted by loss and trauma. I have been speaking throughout the country, and I am an advocate for change. If there's any thoughts or maybe comments about where we are as a district related to this, I would love to know more.
Thank you. First
Mr.
of
Murphy,
all,
if I could, in terms of the IDs,
may I,
that
Dr.
is something that
Davis, first of all, I'd like to offer again condolences to you and your family, and thank you for your courage in the work that you do.
Thank you.
Dr. Davis, please.
We're aware of the bill and in terms of IDs, that's something that we have on all of our IDs. I think that thank you. The National Suicide Prevention Line, and there's other information on here, how you can reach them, not only by their 800 number, their text number, in terms of suicide prevention, but if you're a child also and or anyone that just wants to talk to someone about a problem, there is a number on the ID for them to talk about it. And then we added also, not specifically, I don't know about if it's on the bill 0577, but let's say that you're just in need of help and you feel that you don't feel comfortable going home. There is information on the ID and a number for you to call to get support. So we're aware of that aspect of it, but one of the things that we've been very active in is social emotional health. And that's why we've increased the number of social workers, psychologists, and now counselors that we have. Sometimes it's not a serious problem. You just need someone to talk to. So that's why we have counselors in the school. But the social emotional health of everyone is really, I think, at issue, perhaps even more since COVID. But that is something that all of our schools are involved in. And we have consultants that come in that train us as administrators, but also work with the teachers and obviously the children. We do see, and I mentioned this with the board before, that there's a certain tension in our, not just our community, but in the world. There's an uptick in violence. There are all of these kinds of things. And so not only are we looking at what we do holistically, our concept is that we want to provide someone that listens, someone that can respond, but also hopefully what we provided in each school is a joyful, safe environment, which also gives children a sense of the fact that we as adults care about them. So that is how we're approaching. I never thought about sharing this with the board, but we have had these on our IDs and we continue to update them. The older children, of course, we review this kind of information with them. The younger children that cannot read, those would be the children that we're most concerned about. And I did share at another previous board meeting an issue that we had to find protective care for little children who don't necessarily know how to express themselves in terms of safety. But it's something we take very seriously. But we do address it not only on one level, but on many levels. But safety, having someone to talk to, and just an overall feeling of happiness is what we strive for, in addition to the initiatives that are talked about in House Bill 0577.
Was that some of the training that Mrs. Dusky brought to us earlier in the school year for the teachers and staff for recognizing signs, especially of the younger children? Or different
There's an
things?
ongoing staff development that's led by her through her office, because she is the student support service coordinator. And I think it's well received and well done. We can't just assume that it's children. I also feel it's helping staff. And that's why we have an employee assistance program, and we always have had, because sometimes adults need to talk to someone. And so we don't necessarily force them because of privacy to talk to someone within the school, but we do pay as a district for this service for all of our employees, because we don't feel that we have all the answers. Perhaps there's someone out there with greater training. And so we're looking at everyone that's in our environment.
Well, I would implore you to look at me as someone who's the lived experience and definitely is involved and heavily advocating. I have some innovative ideas that might work and might be of interest to the board in our school systems, particularly those age groups we're speaking of. There are things such as QR codes that could be used and put on those IDs. There's the 988 number, that's a text. I didn't hear that reference, but that is the most national, safest way you can reach someone when you're in crisis. And it also is impacted for those who are parents and veterans and so forth. I see in this bill that it speaks of collaborating with organizations that are out here. I'm here, and I don't want anyone to experience what I experienced. Because as the story goes, my son was 12 when he attempted his first attempt of leaving us. And after that, we took a courageous attempt to do an anti-bullying campaign. We worked with the schools, and we really thought that that chapter was over. And 7 years later, we learned that it wasn't. So I'm very serious in advocating for the need to continue this discussion. And if there's anything I can do with Ms. Dempsey, I was very, very pleased to have her invite me to the schools and talk to the counselors and show our documentary about Jamal and what the village learned as a result of his loss. But I will tell you right now, the rates of suicide and mental health have skyrocketed since COVID, since the Black Lives Matter, and our community is impacted. You will not see it in the newspaper. You will only hear it from word of mouth. And my phone continues to ring. And I'm standing here with courage, with a whole lot of courage, asking you to continue to do the work that has to be done when it comes to raising awareness of suicide prevention and mental health awareness. Your health is your wealth. I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mrs. Maxine Cole. Thank you. At this point, is there a motion to go into executive session?
Mr. President,
Yes, Mr. Vice President.
move that the board go into executive session to consider the pending probable or imminent litigation, information regarding a student discipline case, and the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees or public officials, collective negotiating matters between the body public and its employees or their representatives, deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees, the purchase or lease of real estate, of real property for the use of the public body, security procedures, school building safety and security, and for the use of personnel and equipment to respond to actual, a threatened, or reasonable, potentially dangerous to the safety of employees, students, staff, or public property, or the sale or purchase of securities, investments, or investment in contracts. 5 Illinois CS 120/2, C, 5 Illinois ILCS 122, C, 5 Illinois CS 120, (2) C/7, 5 Illinois 120 /2, C, 8, and 5 Illinois CS 120/2, C, 9. And that's a mouthful.
Indeed it is. We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Secretary, please call the roll.
Mr. Bean,
Aye.
Mrs. Gordon,
Aye.
Mrs. McCray,
Aye.
Dr. Leatherwood,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Mrs. Hutchinson,
Aye.
Mr. Murphy.
Aye. The board will now go into executive session.
Okay.
Are we leaving or staying?